Hi, I'm Adam, and with me is Tyler, and today we're going over our thoughts on the Wizards of the Coast product, Dungeon Master's Guide.
Whoa!
But before we get into this product, though, let me ask a couple of questions, all right? So let's roll an issue.
Sure.
All right, I'm talking to myself first. I always end up talking to myself first in these damn episodes.
Sorry.
All right, so first of all, before we jump into it, my first question is, how well do we know these books? Because we're going over 2014 and the 2024 today. And if I can be honest, I've poured through the 2014 one for 7+ years at this point. I'm very familiar with it, and I have familiarized myself with the new one, but I tried to stay as spoiler-free as possible for this episode. So I've opened it up, I flipped through it, I know what's in there, but I couldn't tell you any of the specific details yet.
As for myself, with the original DMG from 2014, I know it fairly well to the point where I've changed numerous things.
Yeah.
Which is what us dungeon masters do. But I'd say I'm fairly familiar with it. As for the newest one, I have not seen it at all. I'm still going through the PHB, just trying to soak in everything, and then I'm going to move on to the DMG.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time yet for the podcast where you have to dig into this. So.
Exactly.
The next one is, what do you hope to see in this book? And the big thing for me is I hope that we have all of the good crap from before, and there was so much missing from the DMG.
Oh, yes.
From the 2014 version, that I would like to see the new version kind of fill in those blanks and guide the dungeon masters instead of just throwing lists at us, right?
Absolutely. I found with the 2014 one, it was good, but I felt there was so much information in there that was not needed, or it was in such a way that it seemed almost video game-esque, but not quite, but it kind of had that feeling towards it.
Yeah, everything was gamified. Everything was how do I put this? They kept throwing mechanics at shit that didn't need mechanics.
That's exactly it.
And they didn't give us the tools needed to learn how to be a dungeon master, right?
Now, granted, they did give it to us in books that came out after, like Tasha's, like you'd have also in
Mordenkainen's had a bunch, right?
And that's just it. It did come out eventually, but with the original DMG, it just didn't have everything you needed. So I'm hoping that in the new one, that they have a lot of these rule sets that were in the later things that came out compiled into one edition that's made for 5e.
Well, my big complaint for the 2014 version was the thing that I told Dan way back when, and it feels like a DMG 2, right?
Okay.
It's not giving us any of the stuff that we need. It's giving us all the extra stuff to run a game, like the weird side mechanics that we might need, like chase rules and shit like that, right? I don't necessarily need that in my first Dungeon Master's Guide, but it fits perfectly in a DMG 2 from like previous editions. And
exactly. It'd be the second one I want to read.
Yeah. And so, do you have any concerns about this book, about the 2024 version, like what we don't want to see? And what I don't want to see in it is lists upon lists upon lists. Give us a bunch of magic items. That tends to be in DMGs. Fine. But I really like having the rules glossary at the back of the player's handbook.
That's exactly what I want to see.
I would like to see another glossary similar to that in the back of the DMG.
I have no problem with lists at all. In fact,
as long as there's more to it.
Exactly, right? And more explanation and organized properly. Not just in the middle of a chapter, but as you said, a glossary. Mm-hmm. Or even in the table of contents, or even in the beginning of the chapter, it says, turn to this page for these lists.
Yeah, having the the user interface needs to be
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Let's make it easier for a dungeon master to use this on the fly.
So let's jump into the 2014 one first, because we've never really talked about it in this series. Huh. So let's look at it and find out what our pain points are so that we can look at 2024 and see if they fixed it.
Yeah.
So, starting off, we have Sarac on the cover.
He looks so pretty.
So pretty. I didn't even realize that there was someone in front of him for like 2 years.
What?
You're just noticing that now? Because everything's purple, right? It's all purple. So, yeah, there's a straight up hero suffering in front of him. And
I think see the life being drained out of him.
Yeah. So, when you open it up, we're going to mostly look at the table of contents for this, I think. But first, let's look into the disclaimer. Wizards of the Coast does not officially endorse the following tactics, which are guaranteed to maximize your enjoyment as a dungeon master. First, always keep a straight face and say okay, no matter how ludicrous or doomed the player's plan of action is.
Okay.
Second, no matter what happens, pretend that you intended all along for everything to unfold the way it did. Third, if you're not sure what to do next, feign illness, end the session early, and plot your next move. When all else fails, roll a bunch of dice behind your screen, study them for a moment with a look of deep concern mixed with regret. Let loose a heavy sigh and announce that Tiamat swoops from the sky and attacks. So,
minus the Tiamat thing, I've done that numerous times. Where I just roll dice and my player's like, what was that for?
I like that this has a sense of humor. This was the third book published for the
original,
Dead.
yeah.
So,
was it the third?
yeah, the Monster Manual came out first, strangely. And
Okay,
it's because they did all the playtesting for D&D Next.
Oh,
Right? And
okay,
so,
yeah.
like, there was a bunch of, like, free material available for people. So, when we get into it, we have the introduction. It's about 3 pages long. Dungeon Master, how to use this book, and then know your players. It's all so freaking generic that I find that it's just common sense stuff that if anyone has seen a D&D table, you know this stuff.
Now, take it from this point, though. When 5e came out, it came out as super user-friendly. So I understand why it's so generic.
Yeah.
It's getting people back in.
And I mean, that's a fair comment, but it's weird that in part 1 we get the first 2 chapters and it's all about building your own campaign and creating a multiverse. That's not the first shit that I need as a dungeon master.
Some of it maybe to get a general idea of what you want to do, but I don't need to build an entire world from it.
And getting into things like the planes, planar travel, and then a list of things. You spend some time in the inner planes and outer planes, but not nearly as much as the astral plane, ethereal plane, Feywild, and Shadowfell, right?
No, exactly.
So when it does this, though, I know these sections. I'm skipping over the like magic in your world and factions and organizations. It's all generic crap, right? And sorry, it's generic stuff. It's not crap. Some of
it is useful in certain situations.
For the first time you're building something.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if you want to go through and have a refresher on how am I going to make this world different than the last one, I'll touch on a couple of points in here and get re-inspired, sure.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the planes, it's all about creating a multiverse, but you'll notice that we spent all this time building a campaign in Chapter 1, and Chapter 2 is just what the Forgotten Realms multiverse looks like, and it wasn't enough information on all of it. It's all 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Do you remember trying to do the planar episodes that we had to go through, and how fucking little there was?
Oh my gosh.
Like, we were relying on the internet.
Paragraph.
Right, yeah. So there was almost nothing to go off of. So when you jump into part 2, they get into creating adventures. This, honestly, I think is probably the most useful thing in this book.
I would agree, because this is what a dungeon master needs, is how to create an adventure.
Yeah, like that and the running the game section are going to be the 2 main ones, right? So, but the fact that it's Chapter 3 and Chapter 8 is nuts to me. Having build your own campaign shit should be way later, right? Once you've figured out how to run an encounter.
Yeah.
Right? And the multiverse stuff, in all honesty, should have been in Sword Coast Adventures Guide, because that was the Forgotten Realms campaign book of 5th edition.
That was, yes.
Right, and we did, like, it should have all been in there and blown up to be a couple of pages for each anyway.
But it wasn't. I understand what they did and why they did it. Because in a lot of games, you do see that they create the big world first, center it in. Now let's create the adventure that you're running, and then how to run it. I get what they're doing. It's create the massive world first, then create your adventure, and then run the game.
I think that is so counterintuitive to how Dungeons and Dragons should be planned.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, I agree. I understand why they did it, but doesn't mean I agree with it.
Yeah. I want to know what the rules are first, so then I can build a session or 2 around it, and then where do I plunk the session in from there, right?
Where can I be inspired?
Exactly. So we've got the creating an adventure thing, and it's not bad. It's not great. It's not super long, but we end up getting a lot of, like, we have 7 pages of adventure types, right? Which, and honestly, I don't need a big, long layout of all the different kinds of adventures out there. You should be telling me how to run a published adventure for longer than a half a page.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I remember when I did look at these before, one thing I did like is if I were to come into it as a fresh DM, completely fresh. That is a great inspiration for different, because if you are unaware of what these different kinds of adventures are, I found it actually worked if you're completely brand new to it.
Yeah, and I will say this. It's clearly geared towards people that have never played D&D before.
And that's what
And if I'm going to be completely honest, that doesn't appeal to me. But how many new players do we get in 5th edition?
Oh, we got so many.
It blew up in ways that, like, it could not be...
And I think a part of that was because it was so user-friendly. And because they did take the time to go through some of this, like, adventure types. Brand new players, I think they did good, better than previous, to introduce new players into the game.
Yeah, the earlier Dungeon Master's guides were a little dense, right?
A little?
Yeah, okay. So when we get into the next section, which is creating non-player characters...
NPCs!
It's interesting because I think that this is the part that a lot of people skip and then go, how do I make my NPCs interesting? When we have NPC party members, contacts, hirelings, extras, villains, and villainous class options are all here.
And it's actually so good. The stuff in here, if you're drawing a blank for an NPC, go to the DMG. It actually worked.
I gotta say that I do not like the villainous class options. I agree with everything you just said, by the way. Like, I'm trying
to remember the villainous class options.
Oh, it's the Death Cleric, the Death Domain Cleric, and the Oathbreaker Paladin.
Yeah.
I'm not putting classes onto my villains.
It's too stereotypical.
It's not even that. I'm not putting that work in. I'm giving my guy a stat block and a spell list, and I'm moving on, right? Like,
we treat him as a monster.
Yeah. If Strahd and Tiamat and Sarek all have monster stat blocks, why are you encouraging me as a dungeon master to build a class?
I would rather just reskin something.
Exactly. When we get into the adventure environments, there's actually a lot of good stuff in here.
Absolutely.
Dungeons, how to map a dungeon, wilderness, mapping a wilderness survival, settlements, mapping a settlement, urban encounters, unusual environments, and traps.
Yeah.
I want to say my two big complaints about this section are the last two things I just read off.
Yeah, the traps especially, I find it.
There just wasn't enough in there. Like, this is where I wanted a list of 400 traps.
Yeah, right? They told you how to build a trap and how to here's how to describe it.
Yeah, but I wanted here are 25 different kinds of pit traps based on different environments, right? Like this one will do this much damage, this one does this kind of damage, this one has this thing at the bottom of it, right? Like,
and then unsure what to use, roll a D8, choose from this table, or roll a D100.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the percentile dice or something.
Yeah.
I also thought Unusual Encounters was underutilized as well because it's a fantasy system. We should be having encounters underneath giant mushrooms and, on a sea made of fire. Like, there was nothing here to really blow our minds on anything. It was all just like, if it's underwater, if it's in the Underdark. Like, it just...
keep in mind, though, we did get that eventually in the other books that came out.
But it should have been in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
I agree. It should have been in there, but maybe they just didn't port it over yet.
Over 300 pages, and we didn't get these things that we're looking for.
Yeah.
But the reason is that we ended up with a ton of pages dedicated to treasure. There's 100 pages.
Yeah.
Now, we went through magic items, sentient items, artifacts. We did we did episodes of those. And it was a little bit like pulling teeth. Those episodes were not fun to do, but the research wasn't fun to do. But there's so many in here, and they're great. But my complaint then is, first of all, I'm getting these massive charts on artwork worth how much gold and gems worth how much gold, and not the gems that would be used in specific spells or artwork that is magical, or like, it was just like, here's a table of artwork versus it's worth this much versus this one which is worth this much. These are the rarity types, and I'm like,
I didn't need that.
And more importantly, I would have rather had somewhere like a chart of here are all the potions available, here are all the scrolls available, right? Or how to build scrolls at different levels or what they might do.
Did they have that?
It was how to write a new scroll, the mechanic for in-world, right? But it wasn't like as a dungeon master, here's how to build a scroll that's going to act like this, or this is how many charges it should have and how frequently it should regen those charges, and that'll tell you what difficulty or what rarity rather it has or anything like that. Right?
And I love magic items. I really do. But when there is I'm right here. It's magic items start at page 135 and it ends on page 214.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
There's so much in there.
That's about a third of the book.
And I don't understand. Like I get why the sentient items are the way that they are in there, but 3 of those sentient items are available only in Tales from the Yawning Portal. 3 of the 4 of them are in Tales from the Yawning Portal. Why aren't they in that book?
Exactly, yes.
Right? And so this is part of the overall design that I had a problem with the original OG.
That's fair, yeah.
Well, not the OG, the 5th edition, right?
Yeah, yes.
When we get into part 3, we're getting into the rule sets now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Running the game is the next section. Understanding what table rules are and the role of dice and how to use ability scores should have been front and center at the beginning of the book. The fact that we're on page 235.
And that's just it. These rules should have been part of even in the introduction.
Yeah, there should have been. So you want to be a DM. Here's the basic things you need to know.
Yeah.
We get into page 247 before we start to get tips on combat. Now, I know there's a bunch of that shit in the player's handbook, so we should already have access to, and rightly so. But the Dungeon Master side of it should be more than 1 page, and it should be earlier than page 246. Right?
Let me ask you this, Adam. What are the pillars that we so commonly talk about in this podcast?
Role-playing, exploration, and combat.
And in here, exploration has, what, 5 pages?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, no, 2 pages.
No, sorry, yeah, 2 pages
2
there.
pages. Social has 2 pages.
And combat
has 1 page.
Yeah. There are more pages on chases than there are on combat. It's nuts, right?
It really is.
So, diseases and poisons and madness, like all of that is great for including in a DMG. I don't mind that I don't mind that it's in this book because people will go looking for that stuff, especially poisons.
Okay, yes.
Right? But
what is the poison condition?
But I would like more than the 8 poisons or whatever they list in this book. There's just not enough.
Give me a list.
Give me a long ass list. Give me a chapter on poisons, especially because people want to do that. It is one of the big gripes of D&D that you can't really be a poisoner.
No,
you can't really like base your character around poison,
which would be great if you're a drow.
It's a fantasy staple.
Yeah.
Right? Like of adding poison to your blades or the king got sick and we don't know why, right? And like this kind of shit.
Or take the druid of spores.
Yeah, right? There should be a section here on curses and how to use them, and we don't have anything that, right? So these are the things that I wanted out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and this left me kind of stale. We also have a section at the end of this called experience points. By the way, they're also talking about experience points in chapter 3, when they get into creating adventures and random encounters and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
They break down stuff there, and there's stuff in the player's handbook about experience points, and it's kind of spread all out, all over the place. It was too little, too late in the book, and honestly, most people are doing.
It needs to be consolidated in one section.
Yeah, and so, and it is, I think, elsewhere in this book, but
it's mentioned elsewhere.
Yeah. Dungeon Master's Workshop is chapter 9. This gives us things like ability options, which, if I can be perfectly honest, is one of the most underutilized things in all of D&D.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be, because we talk about it when we talk about skills on the skills-based episodes, but I think we've only done 3 of those in the last 300 episodes, right? So it's not popular enough for people to understand that every time that it says roll a wisdom perception check, you can have an intelligence perception check or a charisma perception check, and people don't understand that, right?
Or even the passive ones. Passive intelligence, passive
insight. I want passive stealth to see how quiet my guys just are when they're not trying, right?
Yeah.
But we do get some useful information in here. Combat options, creating a monster, which is not great, but it's okay.
Gives us something.
Yeah. Creating a spell, creating a magic item, and creating new character options. The creating new character options is largely useless, but the rest of it was beneficial, especially for new players, how to think about these things. But again, we're buried over 270 pages into this book, right?
Now, I do remember with the creating a new character option, when I first looked at this years ago, I was all about, I don't want to do what the book is telling me. I want to make my own thing.
Yeah.
Dan hated me for that.
Good.
Half dwarf? What are you, nuts? Yeah, But it's just, I found that jumping into 5th edition, it needed to have at least that for people like me who likes to screw over the DM by creating something completely different. So this gave that option for that. So was it detailed enough? No, mostly useless, but at least it was there to give that option.
The other thing that I appreciate about this section is that it has the lists of when you're creating a monster and you want it to be undead or an orc or whatever.
Does give
gives you that table of add these stats to the
which
thing,
was so useful.
Yeah, that's the kind of list that I'm looking for. Not 100 pages of magic items, right?
No.
So when we move on into the appendices, the first one is random dungeons. This is actually relatively helpful.
Appendixes?
No, appendices. It is absolutely not appendixes. The same way that it's not matrices, it's matrices, and I will come through your speakers at you if you are arguing with me in your car.
I'm having just moments of what movie was it? Or they're trying to the accomplices, not accomplices.
I don't know what movie that was. When we get
Mystery Men.
Did they get into that in Mystery Men? I've seen Mystery Men 100 times. I don't remember that.
Never mind. It's Tangent.
Yeah. What a great movie, though.
Oh, so good.
So when we get into the random dungeons, there's a lot of good information in there. I think it's helpful. It is only 2 pages, but every piece of advice they have in there is solid.
Yeah.
I feel like that should have been a 20-page chapter.
It really should have. And I, honestly, I feel like it should have been sooner. But it's treated as an appendix.
Honestly, this should have been before or after, depending on how they want to lay the book out, the creating your own world and your own adventure and campaign and stuff, right? Let's actually focus on creating encounters, right?
I almost feel like it should be in the creating adventure right after that.
Right. It's so strange, the layout of this book.
Yeah, I get why, but...
Then we get the monster lists, which should have been in the monster manual. The maps was strange. I don't know why we ended up getting these. They are...
what use are they going to be in a book?
Exactly. And they're just kind of like random maps that don't really tell me anything. They're examples of maps, and they're strange. Yeah. Right? So... I
don't mind...
the maps are pretty enough themselves, but they're fucking useless, right?
Now, plug for if you're using D&D Beyond, you can use it in the maps area there that they have.
Yeah, look, that's fair.
But not in a book. It doesn't do me any good.
And it was not on D&D Beyond when this book was released.
No, it was not.
And then Dungeon Master Inspiration, it is 1 page. And it is just different, things that inspired the writers. Like what they leaned on for inspiration, like other media and whatnot. And then we end up with the index at the end. The index I've got some complaints about because it's not intuitive.
No, it's not. You can't really find anything.
No, and a lot of it's there are large sections of it which are creating an NPC, but if you want to create an NPC's ability or NPC abilities, you need to know that's under C. Yeah. And it's one of the subsections. It's very poorly laid out. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the Dungeon Master's Guide, I have complained about because I have a really, really strong opinion about the design of the book. For the 2014 book, I think it came up real short.
It did. However, I think it was an okay launching pad for 5th edition when they're coming out, when they revamped everything. And they tried to just get it out.
The thing that I'll say about this is I don't think any of the material itself is bad. No. It's just laid out poorly. It's in the wrong place, and it doesn't give us... It gives us too much of some stuff and not enough of others, right? And
exactly,
but the information provided within, this is stuff a DM should probably know at some point, right? So let's roll initiative because I want to give it a letter grade. I see. If I roll in a Legend Lore episode, I always go first.
No, remember, you're not talking to yourself. You're talking to me.
Right.
It's okay.
All right, Tyler. I give this a solid B-. It set out to do 80% of what it wanted to do.
That's very fair.
And I think it let us down on a bunch of stuff, but I don't think it is as shitty as Sword Coast Adventures Guide or as lopsided as Theros. I liked the Theros book, but you couldn't run D&D off of just the Theros book.
No, you had to have other things with it.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. I think for myself, I would actually give it a B, not a necessarily B-. And I'm coming from the standpoint of 5th edition was my jumping back in point. I played 3.53, even D&D at A, but I kind of stopped for 10 years. and 5th edition gave me a good option to get back in. And all of the DMG is poorly laid out. It gave at least a good bouncing block to get back in.
Do you think that this book is going to be useful for people that are buying new books that are going to, like, in future editions, are they going to want to go back and look at this?
I would want to have a look at the new book first to see what information is in there, because if there's information in the 2014 version that's not in the 2024, then sure, it might be good as a DMG 2. Like,
I honestly don't believe there's anything in this book, because there will be new item lists. So all the magic items and the way that they function will not be applicable.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
There will be ways to build campaigns or adventures. There will be other, like, if
Stuff
you,
we need to know.
if you
is
want to
gonna
know
be
about the
there.
planes, there are 3.5 books about each one of the planes and the plane and planescape, and there are magazines based on, like, there's other information out there. There are Forgotten Realms campaign setting books that exist from previous editions that don't rely on mechanics the way that this thing is going to rely on mechanics.
No.
I don't think this is a useful purchase after the fact.
After the fact, no. Especially with the 2024 version that's come out.
So, as opposed to, for example, I think that the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual have a lot of interesting ideas and themes in there that did not come over to 5th edition. It's cool to see that. I don't think there's anything particularly useful or flavorful here that we're not going to either get a reprint of Black Razor or, and this is how you make a kobold. We'll get that in another book, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
I think you're right there. I think all the information that we need to have that's in this book, we are going to find in the next one.
Because it's so basic and light on rules.
It is. Oh, Nemesis. That's what it was.
Oh, that was
Mystery.
Nemesis? Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. All right, so moving on to the 2024.
Oh.
So, first of all, when you pick this up...
That thickness. That thing is thick.
I love myself a little bit of girth. So, this book, it's just got weight to it, and it feels real good.
It really does. And I love the artwork in the front there.
It's a lot more colorful. I gotta say, for everything that we have for the 2024 rules, for 5.5, for whatever it is, whatever we're gonna call it, it's very, very...
vibrant.
Yes. So, I think that on the cover, do you recognize him? I believe...
It's the one horn, I'm trying to think.
You've seen that from
Yeah.
the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon from the 80s.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. These are the villains from that show.
Love it. However, when I first looked at this, though, the first thing that came to my mind, Maleficent.
Yeah, I can see that. That art it's good. It's dark. And the skeletal army and stuff with the glowing eyes is really cool. I know this is just a me thing, but like this 50th anniversary thing on the back, it's on the player's handbook, it's embossed and it isn't on the DMG, and I wish it was.
Yeah, I'm just like, it looks like it is.
But when we crack it open, we're no longer given black pages, we're given art that's really like dark and grayed out.
Yeah.
Right? So just kind of a little preview there. We're still given title pages. This one feels like the Dungeon Master Guide because like the art is the book opening up and a castle coming out.
That is fun.
Right.
I like that. It feels like you're delving into a piece of lore. That is needed.
So, when we get into the table... first of all, disclaimer. Does not have one.
What?
Does not have a disclaimer.
Well, that makes me sad.
So, contents. Chapter 1. The basics.
Thank you. Oh.
Starting off, what does a DM do? Things you need, preparing a session, how to run a session, example of play, which we did not get examples in the previous one. Every DM is unique, ensuring fun for all, including mutual respect, respect for the players, respect for the DMs. This is where we start to get into like our session 0.
I was just thinking, this is session 0 stuff right here.
Yeah, at the very beginning of the book. The first 20 pages are what you need to know as a DM here to... Doesn't that just right off the bat feel fucking better?
This is all 100% better. I'm like, yes!
So, and then chapter 2 is running the game. It's no longer chapter 8.
Right. Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, they've done wonders here already.
But here, like, take us through the main sections here, not the subsections. But
what I love first, the very first thing is know your players. Thank you, because you as a DM, you do need to know your players. Mm-hmm. It lets you know about different group sizes, the idea of multiple DMs, which is already difficult enough.
Yeah, but you know what? One of our Platinum Great Worm patrons, Gerald, he co-DMs.
Yeah.
everything. And I have done that, but like years ago, back in, I want to say it was 3.5. I co-DM'd, and it is something people do.
Yeah, and if you can do it, and if that suits your style, great. And I love that they have something in here for that.
Mhm.
One thing I really like right after that is the idea of narration. Not every DM is necessarily good at narrating.
It
And
is.
this is not in the old book.
It is by far the weakest thing that I have to remind myself when I sit down to do prep, and I'm coming up with my lists of this and my maps there, and here's the monster I'm going to put down. The one thing I never do is write out a description as they enter a new place, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that is kind of my 2025
Goal.
yeah, my New Year's resolution almost is to take an hour, figure out the likely places they're going to go, and write a paragraph for each one of these to describe these places, right? Because I skip that all the time. That's a weakness on my part.
They have stuff in here for how to resolve outcomes, how to run a social interaction. We're already. How to run exploration, how to run combat. This is right in the beginning. Before it was like near the end of the book. It's right in the beginning.
Yep.
And it is so good. And then lastly, after all that, in this first section of running the game, it's character advancement, which I think is great. It's after you've done all of it, then how do you...
Yeah, the fact that within the first 50 pages, we have shit like ability checks, attack roll, saving throws. Like, where was that in the... Like, it was buried in the text in the other one. And it's like clearly laid out here. Advantage and disadvantage, consequences, the differences between attitudes, using a map, tracking time, perception and travel. These all get headings and sections for them.
And this is in the first 50 pages.
Yeah, and a lot of it is only like a half page.
But still.
A couple paragraphs, but it's addressed.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't need a 7-page breakdown of how perception works.
I don't need a 5-page thing of how to travel.
It is amazing, though, because when we open up to this page, we can find, okay, so running the game under running combat, I need to learn about how to track monsters' hit points. It tells me what page that's on, instead of me flipping to the chapter and trying to find it in a paragraph. Right?
This is a great...
Clearly laid
Yeah,
out.
I love this.
The next thing that we get is Chapter 3, is the DM's Toolbox. That was so late in the 2014 as well.
This is ready to be, like, just next after.
So the next 50 pages is all just the DM's Toolbox. Alignment, chases, creating a background, creature, magic item, and spell, curses and magical contagions,
Yes!
death, doors, dungeons, environmental effects. These are in alphabetical order so that I can find it
they
easily,
are.
right?
I didn't even realize that.
Fear and mental stress, firearms and explosives, gods and other powers, hazards, marks of prestige, mobs, non-player characters, poison. You'll see that NPCs are busted down to 6 pages, right? Instead of getting a full chapter elsewhere, right?
And look at poison.
Poison has a couple.
Have more.
Yeah, renown, settlements, siege equipment, supernatural gifts, and traps. So there's a lot going on here, but it's 50 pages worth of stuff. And again, we don't get enough traps. That's always going to be one of my complaints.
Yeah.
There was actually a book dedicated to traps in 3.5. And I have it sitting on my shelf. And so every once in a while, when I particularly hate my players, they will get one of those. Chapter 4, now we get to creating adventures.
So far, this is great.
But whereas before it was, these are the things you need to do, now this is the actual guide part of it, right?
Yes.
It was describing what an adventure was in the first one. This one guides you. Step-by-step adventures. Lay out the premise. Draw in the players. Plan encounters. And then under plan encounters, there's pages of character objectives. Keeping the adventure moving. Something for everyone. Multiple ways to progress. Social interaction. Exploration. Combat. Monster behavior.
This truly seems like a dungeon master's guide.
Yes. We also get in this section how to end it and denouement, which is something that we talk about.
Yes, we. And
so
it is not talked about enough.
No. Adventure rewards, adventure examples, and that rounds us out for creating adventures. After adventures, then we get campaigns. And what's interesting here is, if you pay close attention, Chapter 5 gives you all of the stuff about designing it, and then it gives you the Greyhawk campaign setting.
Which is really fun. I love that.
For almost 30 pages.
And it gives a great example.
Yes.
Because as a DM, if you don't know how to do it and you're looking online for different things, it's right in the book here for you, an example for inspiration.
And that is a huge factor in this book, is you get examples all the way through it.
Yeah.
Chapter 6 is
that's we start to get into more of the cosmic stuff, like planes. You get into planar travel. I like that. Then you get planar adventures, touring the multiverse, which we had a whole book on it, so this gives us a short thing, I'm guessing here.
Yep,
And
then
it's like 22 page or 32 pages of that.
and then we get into chapter 7, which is all of your magic items, your treasure, your art and gems and trade goods and all that stuff, right? So
now, given it's still a lot of pages in here, but it's not all focused on just magic items. In fact, if I'm looking on here, the subcategory magic items starts at like 216 and ends on.
It's still over 100 pages, and it was 100 pages in the last one.
No. In the last one, the subsection just magic items.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Was here. It's only 10 pages.
Oh, yeah, but that's. Oh, sorry. Here it is.
Yeah.
You're right.
Now they have a list of magic items from A to Z.
Yeah, but that's the big thing. But they spent 10 minutes or 10 pages rather working on what the different kinds of magic items
Which
are.
I kind of like that. Mm-hmm. It gives you the different kinds.
But also how to award them and how to activate them. And
cursed items.
There's how many items are recharges at the next dawn, right? There's a section called the next dawn, which explains how to use this and what that means.
That is really cool. Or even just the idea of only has so many charges, which is the next dawn.
So chapter 8 is something that I have yet to dig into in its entirety, but it is called Bastions. Are you familiar with this?
Well, I'm familiar with what a bastion is,
it's your player character's home base.
Exactly, yeah.
But there's mechanical boons and shit in it.
Didn't we get that in one of the books?
No, that was in Strongholds and Followers from Matt Colwell.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So this is a codified version of it. Where we end up getting all sorts of different kinds of bastions. We're going to open this book up and flip through it here in a second. But that finishes us off, and then we end up in the appendices. But Appendix A is a lore glossary. Every time that you get a proper name of something, Mordenkainen, Tasha, the Shadowfell, it's listed in the lore glossary.
So
you can just find it. Who is Bigby and why is he important?
Go to the lore glossary and it'll give you ideas.
Yeah.
Where to go.
The Appendix B, again, is a bunch of maps. I don't know why they include maps.
No, hold on. At this point, though, like you have more online things like D&D Beyond where they can use it online.
Right, and I'm sure that's designed with that in mind. Yeah. But also, if you look at them, you will notice that every one of those maps has a specific use case.
Yes.
Like, for example, the map of a keep, a mine, a ship, a dragon's lair.
A roadside inn.
Yeah. A wizard's tower. There are example maps of all of these, so you can, if you need, pull it out and use it immediately. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have tracking sheets at the end. Now you'll notice that these ones are just randomly interspersed throughout the book.
It's almost like an appendix itself in the table of contents.
Yeah, this is where you're going to find the tracking sheets for different things. I know a lot of people that will really enjoy those. That's not something I will use. But it's cool to see that included in case people want to use it.
Yeah, and I've had players that are looking for sheets. And usually it's me looking on Google, trying to find something
what third-party stuff has been made available on Google Images. Yeah. So here we go, Tyler. Flip it through it real quick. So.
All right. Just the basics. Wow. Okay. I love that already. Yeah, you have like that. What does a DM do? What's new in the 2024 version? And so it has like sound advice. You have tracking sheets. It tells you the difference here. You have encounter building assistance.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. How about there's ready-made elements? You have, again, bastions, which you saw, and the lore glossary. That is brilliant.
So, as we start to go through it, we don't need to get into all the rules page by page, but I want you to get an idea of the art that we're seeing.
Oh, that is nice.
So if you keep flipping through, you will see this is one of the tracking sheets. Game expectations. Yeah, with the cute little beholder.
That's so cute. Sorry, that just caught my attention.
So,
there's another beholder. I love it.
When you go through this, you're also going to notice that if you keep a keen eye out, you're going to see familiar places and characters and NPCs.
Is that Ravenloft?
This
No,
is a dungeon. I can't read it upside down.
It's a dungeon room, offers plenty of details for adventurers to explore. It doesn't tell you where it is.
No, but there are some in here which are very much
You can tell.
specific places.
Yes.
And there is a little bit of recycled artwork. I've seen this page on page 33. All right, I've seen that before, but for the most part, it's all brand new. That is the scariest looking Nothic I have ever seen.
Oh my gosh, that just gives me serious alien vibes.
Yeah.
I like it. I love it. It's so good.
So this, for example, is, I want to say this is Sigil. Is this the Outlands?
Yeah, it looks like it. I think so, yeah. Because you got the islands up top. And
Yeah.
That's...
And as we go through, like, we're getting really evocative art all the way through, but you see how easily this is laid out.
I'm looking at this as we're going through here, and I'm just seeing how it's so easy to tell. I like how they highlight certain sections of it that you can easily see.
There is a section here for describing actions.
Yeah.
Because these are the different actions that people have. The ready action, disengage, dodge, help, magic, and ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you know how many times I've had my players ask, what's the dodge action supposed to do?
Well, this is not what it does. That's in the player's handbook. This is how you as a dungeon master can describe it.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's describing the actions.
Yes. So.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So this is.
It's for narration.
Yes, it's very much for narration, and it's
a narration section.
But a narration in combat, right? So as we keep going, we're getting everything from. That's the familiar Xanathar's art, right?
Yeah.
That we have, and pirates, and
that's a Wrinkle Run.
Yeah,
whoever that is. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, he's one of the wizards.
Okay.
One of the wizards. So we get into dungeons, dungeon quirks.
I love a D100 list.
Yeah.
Yes.
You'll see that we're getting into lock quality and lock complexity with the doors, right?
Yeah. And this actually gives you the information you need.
Look, doors with AC, HP, and DC to open.
They're no longer the player's biggest bane of existence unless it's a mimic. But
and it should be a mimic 25% of the time.
Yeah.
As we keep flipping through this, we can see more and more.
Oh, I like yellow mold. Yes.
Yeah, we can see more and more like NPC secrets is addressed.
Siege equipment.
Lots of siege equipment.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple
there's
pages
not enough of it.
So,
there's an XP budget per character. Okay, if you're playing with an XP, this is great.
Yeah, I don't, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's there for people that need it.
Yeah.
When you go through...
Oh, yes.
You're getting... Again, I think this is familiar art, like we've seen before. But this is from Dragonlance. That is Fizzban.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it is.
So there are... Here we go. Into the Greyhawk section.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll see...
there's Tiamat right there.
It runs... Chromatic Dragons... Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then what you should be doing at different levels against... Yeah.
Nice. I love that. The Elemental Evil arc.
Yeah, and then what you should be doing for the Temple of Elemental Evil.
See, I like it because you can give inspiration on this.
Yes.
This is so good. This is what you need. Oh, I'm just getting caught up here.
Yeah, we got to keep flipping. We can't be here.
I'm sorry.
But you see the list of gods of Greyhawk? We get a full list.
Perfect. Yeah.
A nice big map. Eastern Flanace. I never know how to pronounce it. Flanace.
I think it's
locations.
Cosmology.
But you see, that's the Lady of Pain.
Yeah, this there.
This is from Sigil, right? So we're getting very familiar looking art. It's kind of the same style.
But still, like, very vibrant still. It's been redone.
Yes. I love this as a drow city with all the webs.
Yeah, absolutely. At first I thought it was Ghost of Saltmarsh, just sea, but no, that's web.
Yeah, we've got the Radiant Citadel, right, that's being listed here. Instead of it, this is Eberron, right?
Yeah, you can tell with all the, look at that nice airship.
But none of that, it was all Forgotten Realms art in the previous one. This one is more like, here's Dungeons & Dragons overall.
Exactly,
right?
That's what I love, is it includes it all in.
Yeah. And again, when we go through, we've actually seen this group of adventurers earlier in the book as well. So, like, they've got some consistent characters that are moving through.
3 adventurers.
Yeah, some of them are generic, but they use the same ones over and over.
Nice gemstone page of all the different
and the art objects and stuff as well. Again, I don't need this shit.
I don't need it, but I like how it's simple. It doesn't feel like overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit more varied than it was before,
Yeah.
because in the art objects, it was an art object worth 1,500 gold points or gold pieces, an art object worth 2,500 gold pieces, an art object worth 4,000 gold pieces. Now it's specific pieces.
Exactly.
Right?
And what I really like about this too is it's if your party is going in to get it and you have no idea what it's going to be, it's just a list. Roll a d10 on a 2,500 gold piece.
Yep. Magic item tracker. And then we get into the magic items themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of these will be familiar, but there's a lot of new ones as well.
And this is great. It's a fun artwork. It's great. It's good.
It's just a huge portion of this book, right?
And it is.
That's part of what you get with the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah.
Let me see if we can get past it.
This
is all of the lists, right?
There we go.
So
here's the rant. I actually really like this.
But it's separated. Yeah, this feels a lot better than the layout that we had in the original 2014. The layout of all the different arcana items, right? So common, uncommon, rare, very rare.
And I like that. I remember seeing this in the table of contents. If random magic item table.
But instead of after arcana, it then breaks it out to be armaments and implements. And relics. So like this, it feels a little bit better. Then we get into bastions.
Okay.
And again, I haven't gone through this, and we're not going to get into it in this episode. No. But you will see it breaks down
different kinds. I like that.
All sorts of different information that you might need to know about.
And this is really great because as a player character, one of the greatest things they liked is making their own place.
You can have menagerie creatures.
Yes.
There's so much neat stuff in this. Do you want your
own pub?
You want it to be a pub, a reliquary?
Do you want a sanctuary?
Yeah. So.
Oh wow.
And then
I saw this. I want to not now, but I want to look at this. The fall of a bastion. Mm-hmm. How does it go down?
Yeah. Bastion tracker with a little mimic on it.
Yeah. I must say I do like those trackers with the little mini characters they have. This
is our lore glossary. So you'll see that it goes everything. A Sarac, Adamantine. We've got a Chardalon, Baba Yaga.
You got Bahamut. You got Corlon. You got Delina. You got Boo. Nice. He's a hamster. I love that. Oh.
Castle Ravenloft gets its own entry.
Oh, I love it.
These are things that you may not know if you're not big on the D&D lore. But you'll also notice it's kind of from all over. Like Fizban is in here, is right next to Elminster. They're from different settings, right? So this is D&D lore.
Yes.
Right? Not just Greyhawk lore.
Yeah, this is all of it.
Yeah. We got a section on the Raven Queen.
You got Strahd.
The Raven Queen was just weirdly absent from 5th edition. Mentioned here and there, but really not a factor. And gets even a piece of art now. Right?
Which is awesome.
Then that brings us into maps. And these are now more functional maps.
Yeah, you can see the 5-foot squares.
Yes.
You can see it all. It's not just pretty looking. These are actually usable.
Yeah.
And especially if you're getting it online or something like that, you can download it and reprint it.
Yes.
Bigger. Or even just to get your... I personally draw maps for the players.
Yeah.
And so this gives them a great idea for how to draw.
Yeah. And then, of course, you get the index. And the index is still laid out the similar way that the other one was. But it's much better. It doesn't have a whole lot of subheadings through it.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some still, but it doesn't have the...
Not a lot.
No. And then you get the big old map. I believe that this is... I don't want to pull it out. I never pull it out of my books. But I believe that this is Greyhawk.
So. Yeah, I think it is. And it would make sense because they had a whole Greyhawk section.
Yeah. And then the back is still the same interior art as the front was, those 2 black pages. And then that's that.
Oh, wow.
I also want to point out it's the same price as the 2014 one. And it's got... Really? Yeah, it's got actually 80 pages. So anyway, let's roll dice. I'm going to go again. This is how it works, right? So
talk to me, Adam. Talk to me.
The first question is, what are the impressions of this one? But for this episode, it'll be this one versus the other one.
Yeah.
And for 2024 versus 2014. 2024 is by far a superior book. There are mechanics in there, but it is mostly inspiration and tips, right? And that's what a Dungeon Master's Guide should be.
Yes, absolutely. It's how to run a game.
Yeah, because when we get into, and I've noticed this is just the way that Wizards of the Coast operates. If you want to run a Arctic campaign, you need to buy Icewind Dale to get a lot of the mechanics and stuff out of it.
Or if you want to run a ship, you need Ghost of Saltmarsh.
Yeah, and so they tend to have books that can help you. But you buy the one if you want to do, like, this is not going to have Spelljammer ships in it, right? It's not going to have volcano layers. There may be a section on like bits and pieces of I think one of them, the dragon layer, you could make that a volcano layer, the map at the end, right? But it doesn't give it to you. It shows you how to build it, right?
And that's just it. Yeah, it's not saying copy this. No.
I think that the artwork is beautiful. I like it better than the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide. I think that the layout is so much better.
Oh my gosh, hands down, that is my favorite thing by far in this, is the layout.
And I know that makes us big fucking nerds, but hey, you're listening to a D&D podcast, so
who's the nerd here?
Yeah, really.
Besides us.
So my overall impressions is that this is leagues better than the original one. I have no real complaints about this without going into the hard and fast mechanics. I will have to look into that to say, our chase is better. Is there a swim mechanic that makes sense? How do bastions work? Right? Like, there are some things that need to be looked into with the 2024 rule set.
Absolutely, yes.
But we'll get there, right? So
yeah. My first impressions on this, I'm in love with this book. It is leagues better than the 2014 version in the sense of I can take this and it shows me how to run just how to run D&D as a dungeon master.
I could give this book to a new player or someone who's never DM'd before, and they will get use out of this instead of being intimidated by the other one.
And that's just it. This definitely goes more to the I want to know how to DM. I don't need something to give me statistical things. I need something that I'm going to draw inspiration from. And that's based on first impression. I can get inspiration from this.
The 2014, a new Dungeon Master pick it up, and it essentially says, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. This one, you can pick it up and say, how do I? And you will find an answer. And it tells you the answer is here, right?
It's the Google of D&D.
It kind of is.
Really,
just that table of contents really
is brilliant.
Yeah. I have said in the past that players never need to buy a Dungeon Master's Guide, and players still don't need to buy this.
No.
But whereas I think the 2014 one would just collect dust on a shelf, this one has enough lore, enough interesting magic items. I mean, the other one does too, but like enough Greyhawk campaign setting.
Absolutely.
Shit about bastions. There is actually stuff in this that players would be interested in.
And that's just it, is a player could buy this and use it. It's not just for a dungeon master. They can take inspiration of how they want to advance their character throughout the campaign as it's going.
Yes. So the next question is, what do we give this? What rating do we give this one? I'm going to give this an A-. There's still some there's too many magic items still.
Not enough traps.
There's not enough traps. There are things that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
This is way better than any Dungeon Master's Guide I have found yet. So I think that DMG's as it's largely a how-to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that we have Greyhawk in there. If we don't get a Greyhawk campaign setting book, I think that's a failure on Wizards. That's not enough.
No, the fact that they gave that in there, it's like a little tidbit. They need something
it is
else.
an example for building a campaign, but that's not an entire campaign setting.
No.
Right? The same thing with, I thought it was weird that Bastions are in here. I get why they would be, because a DM needs to be in charge of that, but it also makes a hell of a lot of sense that it would be in the player's handbook so players know about it. I don't think there's anything in the PHB about Bastions.
No, there isn't. Right?
So, I mean, there may be something buried in it, but I haven't found it yet. So it's just interesting kind of the way that they laid this out.
Uh-huh.
But it's far more useful than the 2014.
If I had to give a grade to it, I would, just straight comparison from 2014 to 2024, I would give it an A. Just because it's that big of a difference.
You and I both jumped an entire letter grade.
Exactly,
for this, right?
Yes. And not saying 2014 wasn't good for its time.
Mhm.
But now that I see this one and kind of looking at it, I don't need that 2014 one.
It's almost like, now I understand that there are design decisions that are being made at like a corporate level. I understand that the purpose of this book is going to be different than the purpose of the other one. This one, 2024's Dungeon Master Guide, is not there to suck in new players.
No.
2014 was, right? The 2014 set of core rulebooks was there to be like an introduction to D&D. 2024 is, as far as I can see, it can act as an intro, but it's also meant to be there for, hey, you've been playing for a few years now. You want to step up to be a DM? You want to get a deeper experience of your gameplay? You want to be a better role player? Like, that's in the player's handbook. They're doing more to expand our abilities.
And that's just it. It's because of our culture now is we hear about D&D often. It's no longer frowned upon type of thing. And so people know what D&D is, or just tabletop role-playing games, so they can pick up this book if they want to start playing and they want to, we need a DM, or I guess I can do it, and then they can pick this up.
So my last question is always, when should you add this publication to your library? And let's be honest, if you're going to DM, you should add this to your library.
Yes.
But I will say, in the past, I've been on record, it's usually been me and Dan, but we've not been the only two that have said it. For the 2014 one, you can DM without that book.
Yeah.
You shouldn't DM without this one.
I 100% agree that this is a tool that you want in your library. It's not if you have it, great. No, this is you need this.
Yeah, my thing before was with the 2014 rule set. Well, if you're a completionist, or if you can find it on sale on D&D Beyond as one of the bundles or something, sure, pick it up. No, like, there's some useful stuff in there, sure, but like, this one is worth the D&D Beyond price tag of, I think it's like $30 or $40, right? American, of course. But when I saw this on the shelf and I saw the size of it, I have no problem spending $70 Canadian. Like, that's an investment that I will get my money's worth out of.
I think the book that I've had as much anticipation now that I've looked at this, that I've enjoyed just even looking at it, previously was the D&D Essentials book.
Oh, yeah.
Because that gave so much stuff that I craved in there of how to do this. Simple. And to do it. And that's what this is as well. It's not overcomplicating it. It's making it easy to just pick up and go.
It is. I am so curious to see the monster manual.
Haha, yes.
Right. I haven't even, like, there's been a couple, like, previews and YouTube videos, and some people have advanced looks and they'll describe stuff. We've seen a couple of pages of it, but I am so eager to see what it actually looks like. But I'm mostly curious to see what the new starter set has to offer.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I want to see that.
And at the end of 2025, we're getting 2 Forgotten Realms books. One for players and one that's a campaign setting.
Ooh.
And I don't know what that means, because in the past they did that for Princes of the Apocalypse, where they had the online only player's companion.
Okay.
And it was essentially a 20-page PDF to download. And so that's all that there was for players. But in Forgotten Realms, if they're doing the Forgotten Realms and not just the Sword Coast, there's all sorts of shit to be done.
There really is.
And we have never gotten off of the Sword Coast in the last 10 years.
And that's, I want to see.
Like maybe Chult.
I want to see what is the setting they're going to do. Are they going to do a repeat of a previous book or something brand new?
No, it's just a campaign setting, the way that the Eberron book and the Theros book.
Really?
Yeah, it's a straight campaign setting. It's not an adventure.
Okay, not an adventure. Okay.
The adventure that we're getting the starter set, and I think we're getting a dragon anthology. So a dragon-based book. So the same way that Radiant Citadel was. So
yeah.
And Tales or Quests from the Infinite Staircase and those ones, right? So anyway, I'm really happy with this one, and so far 5.5, whatever we want to call it, is 2 for 2 for me, right?
It is. They've definitely done their homework on this, and they've listened to people.
Clearly.
Yeah, and what they wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. So far, it's amazing.
I'm not thrilled with Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast has to do years worth of making up for some of their foibles, but they're clearly listening now to to what the players have to say and what DMs are talking about and online surveys, and they're coming at this with the user experience in mind instead of just here's our game design. And that is what I find clunky, because I've looked at so many other systems that they're like, hey, here's all our cool shit, but it's not easy to follow, it's not clearly laid out, and a lot of it's dense text, and
it's all over the place.
And like Call of Cthulhu and the Alien RPG, like, you've got to learn how the book flows to be able to fucking figure it out.
And that's kind of how the 2014 felt.
Yeah, this one, it's here for you, right? It wants you to enjoy this.
Yeah.
So, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Get this book if you're DMing.
Yeah.
And even if you're not, it's still a handy thing to have.
Even if you haven't moved on to the 5.5 rule set, if you're still using 5th edition, you can throw away all of the like mechanics and the bastions and everything else and still learn how to DM out of this book.
Absolutely.
Easier than the 5th edition book. So anyway, that's all for this episode on the Dungeon Masters Guides. If you've been inspired by any conversations in this episode, you can reach us through our subreddit, r/itsAmimic, our Facebook group, or our Instagram. If you'd like to support us, you can check the show notes below for links to our Patreon, as well as our website where you can donate or check out our store. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and leave positive reviews because every little bit helps.